Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this morning's panel on community impact and collaboration in cybersecurity. My name is Vinnie Persichetti. I'm from the Colorado Springs Chamber in EDC. I'm the Director of Cybersecurity Programs. And quick background on me, I am prior service Air Force, spent 30 years in uniform, retired a couple of years ago and joined the Chamber shortly thereafter to lead their cyber program. I want to tell you that we have a very knowledgeable and engaged panel that is active in our community, ready to cover a variety of topics from education and workforce development, support and sustainment of the cybersecurity workforce, and addressing cybersecurity issues of national importance. So thanks for joining us this morning. Commissioner Vanderwerf did a nice job setting us up, talking a little bit about this community and some of the resources that we have to offer. We have over 125 different companies in this community that focus in cybersecurity. Many of them are focused on supporting DoD missions at installations in our community. And those companies account for nearly 3,500 skilled cybersecurity workers. By our research, by 2025, that number will double for our community, what we will need for skilled cybersecurity workers. So part of our discussion today, we'll talk about initiatives to address workforce education and training. I'd like to first start by introducing each of our panel members, and then I'll give them a chance to tell you a little bit about their backgrounds. So first we have Forrest Senti. Forrest is the Director of Business and Government Initiatives from the National Cybersecurity Center. Forrest, would you like to tell us a little about your background?
Sure. Is this on? Good. Thanks, Vinnie. So most of my background has been a combination of IT, project management, marketing, and kind of startup-related endeavors. But what's been exciting in terms of what I've gotten to do over the past few years has been focused primarily on a combination of election security and actually working on the security of applications like blockchain. So I see Chris over here. All the blockchain guys in the room, raise your hand. Good, cool. So it's been exciting to work on these kind of technologies, be able to do this type of stuff, and getting to work with the Chamber on a number of different committees, ranging from the Cybersecurity Coordinating Committee to the Government Affairs Council, and it's been good to work here in the community. So.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Forrest. Next, we have Gretchen Bliss, who is the Cybersecurity Director for Pikes Peak Community College.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, ISSA, for letting us be a part of the panel. We appreciate that. You're welcome. My background is I spent 25 years in the intelligence community as a Russian speaker, so I got into cyber in the 1980s because it's been going on since then. Since my retirement, I have joined Pikes Peak Community College to develop their cybersecurity program, not just the academics, but also the external reach, the linkages to K12 and pathways. With NCC have developed a career and technical student organization. We've gotten some grants from the federal government to really expand the ecosystem and the educational prospects for our students to fill those huge amount of jobs that Vinnie was talking about. So we do have a cybersecurity associate's degree at Pikes Peak Community College. We are also going to be instituting a secure coding degree as well. And so those are right in that cybersecurity lane. One of the things that we're excited about is that they all have internship requirements, which means businesses and industry, you can get access to our students through those programs.
Thanks, Gretchen. Next, we have Ernest Campos. Ernest is the president of the Information Systems Security Association here in Colorado Springs.
Thank you, Vinnie. Yes, ISSA is an organization, global organization, chapters all around the world. Colorado Springs has the third largest chapter with over 450 members resident within our region. Vinnie mentioned that there's over 125 cyber-related businesses in our region. Our membership actually represents over 80 of those businesses. So we've got large penetration of businesses related to cyber at many different levels. Small business level, right down to independent contributors, all the way up to large businesses. And this is also across multiple industries. We are predominantly a DoD-focused community, but we also cater to the healthcare industry, finance industry, and retail, where they all have equal cybersecurity needs. When we come down to the small business level, we've got a lot of businesses that don't focus on cybersecurity. That's not their work, but they still need to be cognitive of how cybersecurity impacts them. And we've got a lot of leaders in our chapter who are able to go into these businesses and give them advice on how they can better protect themselves.
Thanks, Ernest. Next, we have Abe Thompson, who's the campus director for SecureSet here in Colorado Springs.
Good morning, all. So, hometown kid, so I grew up here in Colorado Springs, graduated from CSCS. Got a CSCS student back there. Good to see you. Went on to be a cyber warrior in the Navy, retired naval officer, like a Navy person over there. I spent a career in sort of the special forces and traditional NSA type signals intelligence missions. Came back here to Colorado Springs after retirement and after being in education for a while to be the campus director here at SecureSet, where we provide intensive cybersecurity training, not focused on passing necessarily a test as much as teaching folks to do the work. And that is our objective. As you know, our partners in education here, we're focused on teaching the skill, not just the ability to get a validation externally. And so that intensive training produces really some amazing folks as they graduate from our programs. You heard Eka talk about this morning the cyber business plans. That's one of the things that we push our students through, is the ability to draft strategic and executable cybersecurity plans, because we want them to come into your organizations, whether you're a small business or part of a larger entity. We want them to come in and set culture, set a cybersecurity-minded culture. And so that's our heart's desire, and that's why I'm involved there at SecureSet. I'm also a co-host for the New Cyber Frontier podcast, which is run by Mr. Gorok. I think Gretchen's on there as well. Sean Murray, I don't know if he's in the room, and a few of us. We have the privilege of interacting globally with professionals in cybersecurity and hitting the issues that are relevant. So if you're interested in kind of an issue that might be relevant to you, look up the New Cyber Frontier, and there's plenty of advice through some of the folks that are on our program for small businesses.
And finally, we have Dr. Rick White, who is the Cybersecurity Program Director at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you again for inviting us here. UCCS has 11 qualifying cybersecurity degrees, and we graduate 110 students a year currently through our computer science programs that are in the computer science department, the engineering department, and the College of Business. We are the recent recipients of a $2.8 million annual grant from the state of Colorado, and the purpose of that grant is to enhance cybersecurity and workforce development, research and development, and law enforcement support. And we're engaged in a number of initiatives with the folks who are on this stage and also out in the community, and our job is to enhance cybersecurity for the state and for the nation.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. So by quick show of hands, how many people in here have kids who are within the K through 12 space? K through 12? And so follow-up question, how many of you are in the K through 12 space? I see a table over here. There we go. Great. So we have some great initiatives happening throughout our community that are focused on developing that sector of our community, because we know that as we grow, need to grow that capability to fill those future cybersecurity positions. We need to start young with our kids and make sure that they understand the importance of cybersecurity and what a cybersecurity career means. So I'd like to start with a question for Gretchen. Gretchen, would you let us know how has Pikes Peak Community College taken advantage of grants to further grow programs in the K through 12 space and then connect them to industry, government, and professional associations?
Thanks, Vinnie. Yeah, we were very fortunate to be part of a Department of Defense Office of Economic Adjustment grant about 4 years ago. And through that grant, we were actually funded to get certified by the National Security Agency as a Center of Academic Excellence for Cybersecurity. As part of that, we got a funding initiative to work with the Chamber to expand the cybersecurity ecosystem. And our focus was in career pathways, K to 16, actually 18. We went even higher. And so through that, what we've done is we have engaged the 16 school districts in Colorado Springs. As you guys all know, it's not like Denver Public Schools where it's all consolidated and you can go to one place to take care of a bunch of people. You got to go to everybody individually. And so we went to each of the districts and tried to figure out what they were doing, if they were pursuing cybersecurity, and how we might help them and assist them. And a lot of them said, yeah, please come help us do this. So we were able to then apply for another grant through the National Initiative of Cybersecurity Education, called NICE, for what was called, and I'm sorry, this is a bunch of government acronyms, but it's called the Regional Area Multi-State Partnership, RAMPS. And that allowed us to engage K12 to both train not only students and develop programs in the schools, but to teach your teachers. You know, because sometimes that's hard, because a lot of us didn't grow up in that digital space, and so it's a little bit harder to bring that into the classroom. And so what we did is, for 2 years, we funded 6 of the 16 districts. We invited everybody. Not everybody had the capacity to come to us, but we were able to get 6 of those districts teacher training programs and student camp money for 2 summers. An outgrowth of that was a program called Cyber Prep. Hey, Lawrence, he took some of our students, just like AITHA. And we were able to, for 3 summers, to put high school students, juniors and seniors, into industry. And I think industry was pretty amazed at the talents these high schoolers had. And NCC took some as well. I was thinking about that. So we've had a really good industry response. And as small and medium businesses, you can engage these programs. It's usually funded through a grant. Our grant ended a year ago. However, the Pikes Peak Business and Economic Alliance, write that down, PPBEA, is a local consortium that grew out of what we did in our grant to consolidate all of this opportunity so that you guys have a one-stop shop. If you want help with cybersecurity in your company, you go to PPBEA and say, I need somebody for the summer to do these sorts of things, and they will go out and recruit students, and you students can sign up there, just telling you, and be a part of that process. And a lot of it is unpaid. You have objectives, but if you'd like to pay them a bit, that's always good too. And also the grant will help you pay those students during the summer. So that's one of the things in K12. And we now have 6 articulated programs to Pikes Peak Community College. So if you take these programs in high school, you actually graduate from high school with one of the 2 years that you need for an associate's degree. And then you can move up into articulating with lots of great organizations that are up here to further your education to get that 4-year or get a job in the community. So we have expanded our advisory board to include cybersecurity companies. At first it was IT and computer science, but since we added the cyber part of our program, we've added 4 or 5 people to our advisory board from industry to really help us guide the content and where we're going. We also offer certifications. We were talking about, Abe was saying that hands-on. Our associate's degree is very hands-on so that you know what you're doing and you can go out into the community and perform. But at the same time, a lot of times DoD requires certification, so we got to make sure we check those boxes too, right? And it's good because it gives you a lot of those bona fides as well as being able to go in and do it. So that's what Pikes Peak Community College has done. And our enrollment has expanded over 450%. We have almost 300 students in the cyber program and that are going to be graduating this spring. Not all of them because we're in phases. So about 50 or 60 of those are going to graduate this spring.
Thanks, Gretchen. Fantastic. Follow up to that for Abe. With regards to SecureSet's work in the K-12 space, what have you been involved with to help connect these students with the cybersecurity discipline?
One of the neat things we've had a chance to do with District 49 is an organization called AeroLab, if you've not heard of them. It's sort of enrichment training. So AeroLab does pilot training, so these high schoolers get to go out and fly planes and do neat stuff like that and do some robotics, but then they also do cybersecurity. And so we've hosted now a couple iterations of what looks like sort of an internship with these high school students where they come in and they learn the introductory basics to cybersecurity. And I say learn, I would say they continue to learn because as I've observed District 20, District 11, and all these districts that I run into, not to discount any of the districts that are out there, but so many of the districts in Colorado Springs have preeminent cybersecurity programs. And I fully expect very near term that we'll have high schoolers graduating with Security Plus type certifications. I believe it's within their grasp. I've seen it firsthand. When she talked about the internship, when Gretchen mentioned that, I had the privilege of interviewing 36, I think, of those internship students, and I just saw such a tremendous cybersecurity knowledge already and just a burgeoning foundation. And if we've got so many job openings, we need to shift the paradigm. I've already had students come through. I had a 17-year-old come through our program. And now, of course, you have to have a GED or a high school diploma to start our programs. But on his 18th birthday, he was offered a job with the Broadmoor IT and Security Department. He ended up wanting to do something else. He ended up going as a subcontractor with this larger company in the Bay Area called Google, something like that. So I've seen, I saw a 19-year-old go into Motorola. I've seen these 18-year-olds that are going out there and doing good work. And if the military's done it, I have no reason to believe that it isn't entirely possible for other sectors of the industry to welcome these young folks into the workforce as they're continuing their education, for sure.
Thanks, Abe. Next question for Forrest from the National Cybersecurity Center. The NCC is involved in some really cutting-edge workforce development initiatives in the K-12 space. Could you tell us a bit about the innovative programs that you're rolling out from the NCC?
Sure, but the very first thing I want to do is just say that one of the neat things about living in this community is that, whether it's local, state, or national impact, we get to work with everybody on this panel in accomplishing everything I'm going to talk about. So we don't get full credit for anything I say, for the record. So some of the big things that have come out, and Gretchen was one of the first people that was a part of it, was building this thing called the National Cybersecurity Center Student Alliance. And at the end of the day, what this is all about is encouraging students like you, right here, to begin working with your teachers in your own schools, begin developing these cybersecurity knowledge base so that by the time you graduate from high school, you have all your industry level certs to be able to get you through and be able to go into a program like PPCC or SecureSet or even a 4-year degree. And the good thing about starting early and starting young is that it allows you to be flexible in how you want to take on your career pathway. Some people might want to go in the Navy. Some people might want to just go through a hunt program like what Abe talked about. There's a lot of options for everybody. So the NCCSA program is encouraging and building towards doing that. And one of the big things we're working on right now is not only the cybersecurity portion, which is certs like A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, or IT Fundamentals, as it expands to include the national program Cyber Patriot, for those that are familiar. A lot of that program is going to be built around having Cyber Patriot as a core component too, so that down the road, if you're a part of Cyber Patriot, you're also a part of NCCSA. And that's part of the vision. And now that's going to take a lot of work to get that done. But as we accomplish that vision and get closer to that, literally here in this city is going to be the founding of something that could encourage tens of thousands of students nationwide to eventually become essentially cybersecurity, go-getters by the time they're 17 or 18. So, and on top of all of that, we're encouraging, and working with, we have new adult programs on top of that in terms of workforce, so we're not only taking students, but also working with adults who want to transition into cybersecurity. And again, one of the fun things about that is these two guys are doing that too. So we get to do a lot of similar things in this community to kind of bolster the cybersecurity workforce, because there is a big shortage. I think is it 300,000 jobs nationwide and over 2 million worldwide? Yeah. So this is a growing industry. We need people fast, and the faster we can get these things to market, the better things go.
Thanks, Forrest. So as you've heard, there are a lot of great initiatives happening in the K-12 space, and we've really only scratched the surface today. I'd also like to talk a little bit about some of the great initiatives happening within higher education. Rick, UCCS received a grant this year from the state with a focus on further developing your cybersecurity initiatives. Could you tell us a little bit about that grant and how it ties into the community?
Certainly. So the $2.8 million that we get from the state is for workforce development, research and development, and support to law enforcement. We just completed the first year of that grant, under which we gave $145,000 or invested $145,000 through the School of Public Affairs Public Safety Initiative, and invested that into 16 area law enforcement agencies, where we were instrumental in helping them get cybercrime training that they didn't otherwise have, and also some equipment to help them with their cybercrime, and in particular with internet crimes against children. So we employed some of the funding for that. As far as research and development, the authorizing legislation came about primarily because the state had endured a security breach, a rather major one, a couple years ago, and they're interested in looking at how blockchain technology could be employed in closing that vulnerability. And we are working with people, partners like Blockframe, with Chris Gorog's company, to help close that gap. We are also working with others, including the U.S. Postal Service, which is using blockchain to try and secure elections. So we've been working in those areas as well. But as far as workforce development goes, our job using the state grant is to build bigger and better programs so we can graduate more students and get them in the workforce to help close some of these gaps. You'll hear various numbers thrown around, but the Department of Labor says that there's a shortage of 350,000 cybersecurity qualified workers today, and that in the state of Colorado alone, there's over 10,000 jobs that are unfilled for because of that shortage. We're not going to be able to close that gap ourselves, and we need programs like SecureSet who can rapidly adapt and provide skilled students, and even Pikes Peak. Both Pikes Peak and SecureSet run fantastic programs, and if you come out of those programs, you're going to have the certs. You're not going to get the certs at UCCS. What you get at UCCS is the degree. We've had conversations with businesses in the community about the difference between why UCCS doesn't go and give certifications to our students compared to places like SecureSet and Pikes Peak. And the answer is the difference between training and education. And I'm not trying to sound snobby or anything like that, but education traditionally is about preparing for things that we don't know, whereas training is preparing for things that we do know. And the advantage that we have in education, particularly with respect to cybersecurity is constantly changing. And in order to adapt to that change, it helps to be prepared to deal with what you don't know. So our advantage there is not saying that we shouldn't or couldn't do certifications, but the focus right now is on education versus training. Not to say that we don't appreciate what they're doing and don't want to work together with them. We do work together with them. In fact, we're working on pipelines to try and poach as many students as we can from Pikes Peak. One of the big initiatives under the Cybersecurity Initiative from the state is that we're trying to set up the accessions so we can tap into that pipeline of students that are coming from Pikes Peak. And by the way, for businesses out there in the audience, we do run an internship program, and if you need students right now, we are currently getting requests from industry for students who are in their sophomore years at school. The advantage of getting students when they're sophomores is that if you have a job, if you have a position that requires a clearance, is that you can help line them up for that clearance and get them before anything could possibly go sour or wrong. And I'm talking about keeping a clean bill of health along with learning your skills. So if you're interested in getting some interns from UCCS, either contact me or Susan McClernand, and we can help get you set up with some interns.
Thank you, Rick.
Add real quickly, I appreciate the poaching from us because we're happy to poach right back. In fact, one of my instructors is a PhD candidate in the cybersecurity program at UCCS. So I love the ecosystem that we have here.
Thanks, Abe. Great follow-up. I think we have another one from Gretchen.
Yeah, sorry. It's funny. We all have worked together for so long. One of the things that we always say is that highway is wide, right? That those 36,000 or whatever number we're going to use, that highway is wide. And if we all produce at 100%, we're still never going to meet that need. So we all have to work together and find ways to find success and get students into the workforce as quickly and as efficiently and as with as much talent as possible. And so that's where these partnerships have been amazing. So just know that this community, it's very different than any other community you've seen, even Denver, is that it's not as competitive because we all are working together and we want you to be a part of that team. Small and medium businesses are the heart of Colorado Springs. And along with the government contracting, we can all work in that same space and get stuff done and get the jobs and get you guys secured the way you need to be.
Excellent. Thank you, Gretchen. So we've talked a bit about efforts underway to help train a workforce, but even once you have a trained, skilled workforce, there are requirements to maintain that training and maintain those skills. Ernest, would you tell us a little bit about the efforts ISSA has taken on to help maintain a healthy and skilled workforce?
Sure, Vinnie, thank you. So the community that we've established, this ecosystem that we have, is very strong. I appreciate conversations where we talk about the efforts being made at K12, efforts being made at the collegiate level, efforts being made at training and a vocational level, and then they get handed off into the workforce. Everyone going through these channels aspires to one day work in the field of cybersecurity. When they get there, what remains, what programs and organizations remain to help sustain their careers? And that's where organizations like ours, and we're not the only, there are others, but we come into play to help with the sustainment of careers for the long haul. We provide opportunities for our members to gain continuing education opportunities through industry representatives and companies and organizations who work at solving problems within the cybersecurity industry. And they bring their thoughts and their solutions, and they come and they educate our professionals on those topics so that they can take that knowledge back to their day-to-day jobs. We also provide opportunities for our members to collaborate and network with each other so they can talk amongst themselves what their problems are and how they're solving those for the benefit of other members that they collaborate with. The ecosystem that Gretchen was talking about that we have established here in the Colorado Springs region, it truly is unlike any other large city. Even large resource-rich environments, you go back east, the DC, Northern Virginia, Maryland regions, unlimited resources, they do not have the spirit of collaboration that we have here. And it is nice that we can work with each other at all levels to support each other, knowing that, you know what, we're all going to get our piece of the pie and there's no need for competition.
Thanks, Ernest. Appreciate it. So we are fortunate to have a resource in Colorado Springs like the National Cybersecurity Center. Forrest, would you share with us some of the lines of effort within the National Cybersecurity Center and how those impact the community in terms of economic development, innovation, and also attracting national attention to our area?
Sure. So the first one that I was normally talking about, I already talked about a little bit, and that's the great work that we're doing locally with workforce development. That piece is translated to a lot of conversation at the national level. We get to inform policy decisions with our Senate and congressional staff regularly. We get calls, we get emails, they ask us, hey, what should we be looking at, in national education in terms of cybersecurity? How should we be approaching this? What kind of certs should students be looking for? Like when somebody calls and they say, hey, what's the primary cert for someone going into DoD? And you say, okay, well, there's a pathway to get to Security Plus, but typically it's Security Plus. And they go, oh, okay, cool. And these people didn't know that. So it's, it's nice to be able to impact in that way. But in other ways we've been working on, we have 2 other initiatives. One that just started this year in April. It's called the Space ISAC. For people that don't know, that is the Information Sharing and Analysis Center, specifically around the cybersecurity of space-based assets. Here in the Colorado Springs community, space and cybersecurity are one of our biggest missions when it comes to the private sector. Like what Vinnie said, we have over 125 different cybersecurity companies, and I would reckon to guess a pretty significant portion of those actually work in space, as well as or associated space-based missions, whether it be ground to space or different uplink kind of type systems. But what that allowed us to do is actually provide an additional incentive for the future of Space Force or Space Command to actually be permanently based here in Colorado Springs. And what that means for the economic development for the city is the addition of 10,000 plus new jobs, the movement of private sector businesses in space, cybersecurity, and associated businesses to move here to Colorado Springs instead of going to Denver, Houston, or Florida. They would choose here. So if you haven't bought your house already, please do, and then buy another one, just in case. But so that's been a great journey to do that, and we get to work with our congressional staff and even Vice President and President's office on making space a critical infrastructure. In the United States, we have 16 critical infrastructures. Space is not one of them right now. We get to go to DC in 2 weeks and literally work and sit there with the National Space Council and National Security Council and talk to these people on why they should be making these decisions and inform that decision and lead them to that result. And there's a possibility by the end of this year that will happen. So it's been great and that comes out of this community. That's not out of some think tank in DC or some office in Florida. It's coming out of here. And the last one, which selfishly I run, has to do with election security. So for those of you who served overseas or have a friend or family member or anybody that's disabled, we worked to basically pilot a project here in Colorado where you were able to vote using a blockchain-based mobile voting application to be able to vote securely overseas. Previous methods were around voting an unencrypted non-TLS email, which is very insecure for people that know what that means. It's almost, I might as well just write an open note to Gretchen, then she hands it across and she can fully read everything that's on there. That's how insecure it is. And our votes are being transmitted this way. So we worked on a project here in Colorado to do that, and that project has since expanded into 3 other states, Utah, Oregon, and Washington. And we're in talks for other countries too, so international work now in this space. And in this kind of effort around election security and voting, we've gotten to, again, inform a number of policy issues that came out of this city. One of our city councilors was a former Secretary of State, where we have the #1 election security state in the nation. Our city clerk, she sits on a number of boards and critical infrastructure around election security. Those people are all here, and they've gotten to inform national pilots around national issues. So this community has gotten to do a lot nationally, so it's going to be kind of cool. So, yeah.
That's exciting. Thanks, Forrest. Earlier, we had touched on security clearances and the impact that has on our cybersecurity workforce. We had undertaken a study a couple of years ago that showed among the cybersecurity industry, security clearances were the #1 job requirement. And it was so bad a couple of years ago as far as the delay in someone acquiring a new security clearance that many companies wouldn't even interview you unless you already had one. So from a community standpoint, we've had to look at different ways to be innovative when it comes to helping those who do not currently work in the defense space and already have a security clearance to find ways to get one. There are several different initiatives underway. I'd like to talk about one that Abe is leading out of SecureSet.
So we're very excited. We've, whenever I've had a chance to get in front of the governor, the mayor, or any sort of leadership person, I usually am one of the several people that's screaming, standing on the table about this clearance thing. And my concern was, and since this is the Small Business Development Council, right? My concern was a lot of the large organizations were complaining about not having the ready workforce, and yet they wouldn't consider looking at other ways to make clearances happen for people to enter the workforce. It's one thing to have the military folks, which we have come through SecureSet, which is great. They have clearances and they can hold on to that as a definitely a great asset. But there weren't as many folks that were stepping into the fray to make opportunities for that ramp and for that transition. And so, and I know several of us are going to see these things emerge here very quickly, but we've been really encouraged to have just signed an agreement with Jacobs Technologies, which is a big defense entity. They're going to come in, they're interviewing our students even now to bring them in on internships for the purpose, of course, of getting them ready to work in the industry, but also to get them cleared. And that if there's anything in cybersecurity that can move me toward tears, it's the joy that I feel in seeing that happen, because it has been such a stumbling block for some folks, because of unfortunately the majority of the jobs, particularly in this area, there's a clearance mandate, necessarily, of course, but I'm starting to see now this faucet, I think, is going to turn on, and others are stepping into the fray, and I know they're going to partner with other education institutions here in town to do the same. So I'm very excited to see this happen and just to be able to look at it firsthand, and thanks to Jacob and the others that are stepping forward to do that.
Thanks, Abe. We've lost Wayne Howman from the Gazette, so we can speak freely and openly now. Kidding, Wayne.
Hey, Vinnie, I'd like to comment on that, because I think Abe's right. For 4 years, we've been screaming about this, because if any of you know the DoD defense community, and this isn't a judgment, this is just fact, they like to poach from each other, right? One guy gets one contract, and then the other company who lost the contract, they poach those guys. And you kind of played this chess thing for a while. Well, the jobs kept expanding, right? And that's been the issue, is that poaching's not good enough anymore. We got to get more people into the fray. And I think because of a lot of to go back to what Forrest was saying about that, we're having a national impact. Because of us bitching so much for 4 years and really hitting industry with this, huge companies now, Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman, and the big names we see on the TV, are actually putting programs in place where they take students a year before they graduate. They go through the full interview process, and then while they're finishing up school to graduate, they're getting them a clearance. And so they've figured this out, and so students, this is a great opportunity for you to get in and get exposed to some of these, that you can be having these companies work for you while you're finishing out your degree, and then when you graduate, and we have two, just like Abe's got quite a few, I know UCCS has had quite a few, that have gone into industry and been able to hit the ground running once they get that clearance. And so, what we've done here is had that national impact of these big, huge companies now waking up and saying, oh, we need to do something about that.
Thanks, Gretchen. So as you can see, internships seem to be one method of entry, and that's beginning with training organizations at two-year schools. Rick mentioned UCCS is involved in this as well with their internship programs. So this may be our way ahead as a community to try and solve some of those issues related to uncleared workforce trying to get in with the DoD. Gretchen, I'd like to follow up with you on another question. You mentioned earlier the Cybersecurity Associate's degree that Pikes Peak Community College rolled out, which is celebrating its first anniversary here shortly, I believe. Could you tell us a little bit about how successful that program has been and what role industry has played in its development?
Absolutely. I mentioned some of this earlier, that we really rely on industry to give us the feedback, and not just the big dogs. You guys too. We need to know what industry across the board and the different sectors, like you said, banking and insurance and medical and all that, retail, we all need to understand, because our students, we're not building, everybody knows my little saying, we're not building purple unicorns here, we're building purple, because education can only do so much. We need you guys in the industry to engage to make them unicorns. And so that's why that apprenticeship program and some of the outreach that we've done with industry to bring you into our classrooms, to work with SecureSet on our cyber capture the flags, where we get folks in there and have discussions. Some of our students have even gotten hired by sitting in those. So there's lots of opportunities inside of that. So our program was built to NSA standards, because that's how we became a Center of Academic Excellence, which is also UCCS. We are the highest concentration of academic excellence schools outside of the Washington, D.C. area. Pretty impressive, right? There's 6 schools, including the Air Force Academy, in the greater Colorado Springs area that are CAE certified. So that's a higher standard that we have. And so we actually try to reach out and involve industry all along the way, building new programs, improving the ones we have now and getting students jobs.
Thanks, Gretchen. Appreciate that. I'd like to follow up with Rick. Rick, you mentioned earlier about the state grant that's focused on helping to build out that cybersecurity program and how it ties into the local community. Could you expand a little further on that and talk about how that has impacted efforts at the state and national level?
I will, but I'm going to go off script a little bit.
Feel free.
The state cybersecurity grant, Senate Bill 18-86, gives us a means and builds upon an initiative that began in 2016 with House Bill 16-1453, which actually established within the state of Colorado something called the National Cybersecurity Center. For a state institution, that's a pretty broad mission, and it's meant to not just support the state, but also to support the nation. So the things that they want us to do are to build bigger and better programs to help solve cybersecurity for both the state and the nation. And when I say solve cybersecurity, there's another way to go about this problem with the gap in shortage in talent. Instead of trying to produce more cybersecurity professionals, let's eliminate the threat and vulnerability to cyber attack. And that's one of the things that we're focused on at the university in the research and development side of the house. And we're working on some initiatives to do that. But I will tell you that universities are not the best equipped institutions to work on these kinds of problems and come up with solutions. That in many cases that these solutions are best addressed by small business and entrepreneurs and young students, because you're not constrained by blinders to convention of what's going on right now. And so where we are constrained by the need to publish and do research on a cycle that helps our careers, entrepreneurs, small businesses, and young students are not. So rather than just focus on trying to learn those skills in cybersecurity, which are a subset of computer science, those skills are patch, configure, monitor, and pray, okay? Instead of focusing on that, let's focus on how do we close the gap? How do we make our systems invulnerable to attack? Because the two biggest forms of attack are phishing and exploitation. Phishing being by far the easiest one. And to go back to something that Forrest said, yes, indeed, it takes a village to create cybersecurity, but all it takes is one village idiot to make you vulnerable. And unfortunately, the problem with stupidity, as Einstein is said to have quoted, genius has its limits, stupidity doesn't. So rather than live in a world that's tipping precariously on the edge, part of the thing that we want to do, and for the betterment of the state and the nation and the world, is let's get beyond this problem. This is just the latest in a string of problems in technological and computer science. Let's get beyond this and solve it, and let's eliminate vulnerability to cyber attack.
Thanks, Rick. That's some pretty grand thinking, and that's what we need. I'd like to follow up with Ernest. You spoke earlier about how you support the cybersecurity workforce through ISSA's efforts. Could you speak a little more about ISSA's efforts with community outreach and partnering with organizations throughout the community?
Sure. A perfect example of how we reach out and partner with organizations. Earlier, Gretchen talked about the work that Pikes Peak Business and Education Alliance is doing. Earlier this week, they had a half-day workshop conference where they invited industry and educators to come in together to learn how they could better collaborate with each other for the benefit of students involved in the K-12 system, leading into collegiate systems thereafter. So impressed was I with that presentation and that half day. that we've already scheduled a encore presentation for the Business and Education Alliance to come to our next chapter events in the month of November, our dinner and our lunch events, and they're going to further discuss exactly what they can do to our members, representing, again, over 80 businesses in our community, and how they can work with the school districts to be a collaborative part of supporting their efforts. All of these leading on to potential internships for students down the road. That is an example of how we take the resources, the strength of our organization, and leverage it for other organizations for what their initiatives might be. And it agrees with our own initiative. We want to provide knowledge and awareness and education for our members so that they can understand what exists beyond their day-to-day, their 9-to-5 job. What else exists in this community apart from the organization that they've subscribed with, our organization, and how can they take advantage of the opportunities that other organizations are making available to the community. And also, how can they get involved? How can they volunteer their time and be a participant in those things? Those are all examples of what we do. And we've done multiple other engagements. We've worked with NCC on many of their regular programming and events and large conferences. We're strong with UCCS. They partner with us on one of our major conferences throughout the year. And SecureSet, my goodness. We recently, at the international level for ISSA, got approval to recognize SecureSet students as academic students, which qualifies them for the student rate of membership. Significant discount, $120 for general members, $55 for students, and now SecureSet students all qualify. That enabled us to bring new breath into our organization by an surge of youthfulness. Traditionally, we've been catering to DoD. Traditionally, DoD members tend to be a little bit older in age. And we realized that we too, as an organization, needed to have fresh blood. And this accomplishment that allows us to bring in students with our relationships with Pikes Community College and UCCS and SecureSet brings that new blood into our organization. And that is the future. So you combine that opportunity and the eagerness that's involved with that, with the relationships that we've established with other community organizations. And what we have is strength not just today, but strength to sustain cybersecurity as an industry in our community for many years to come.
Thanks, Ernest. That's excellent. Ernest touched on our DoD partnerships. This may be a surprise to some of you, but we have quite a few military in our community. I'm joking, of course. We average between 300 to 500 military members that transition out of the service every month. And what we've discovered is that about 75% of that group would like to stay in Colorado Springs, but only about 40% are able to because of opportunities. So, Abe, could you talk a little bit about your partnerships with the military installations and how you're able to help some of those transitioning service members stay in our community?
Sure. Just as a quick follow-up to what Ernest is saying, with the new breath going into the ISSA chapter here in Colorado Springs, I have to say the reciprocal has been astounding. We're very grateful. I mean, the mentorship that comes from ISSA to our students, several of the members come to the campus and directly mentor either cohorts or individual students and have provided training and connections and all of those other things. And then whenever I need a substitute for an instructor, I'll put the call out to Ernest, and he turns on that ISSA network very quickly for us. So definitely grateful, and again, just a beautiful example of the ecosystem that I'm so proud of here in our city. So we had the privilege of being part of, in the Army and the Air Force, what's called the Career Skills Program. The larger DoD term is the Skill Bridge. What this allows is, in accordance with the VOW Act, which was passed by Congress, I want to say back, it's been less than 10 years. I can't remember the exact date. But this VOW Act directs the armed forces to, when operationally able, to release military forces from their regular duties within 180 days of transition out of the military to conduct some transition or skills training. And in so doing, they keep their pay, their housing, their military health benefits, and go to school full-time in preparation for their next career while they're still on active duty. So tremendous program. I'm very jealous that it wasn't more visible when I got out, but I'm glad it's there for these students. And so in our particular case, we have the privilege of being part of this career skills program. It's called the Cybersecurity Careers Program. And so a good number of my students come directly while they're still on active duty, have had plenty of Air Force and Army, looking to see finally, I think, my first sailor in our next cohort of active duty students. But it's just this neat opportunity, because here some of them had their clearances, that's great, but I will tell you, one of the most terrifying times in a military person's life is that tail end of the career. It's like stepping into an entirely different culture. We are literally landing on Mars and walking in to interact with an entirely new environment. And so it's a difficult time, and I love, having had the experience of transition myself, that we get the opportunity to be a part of that. And then all these organizations are partnering with us and supporting that and giving them exposure to the cybersecurity ecosystem here in Colorado Springs.
Thanks, Abe. So we've talked quite a bit about the cybersecurity ecosystem and how collaborative the different facets are. One area we haven't really touched on yet is innovation. And to be truly considered a national level resource in cybersecurity, there has to be an element of innovation. Within the National Cybersecurity Center is an organization, a nonprofit known as Exponential Impact. Forrest, could you tell us a little bit about that organization and their focus?
Sure. So for those of you who aren't familiar with a traditional tech accelerator like Techstars or Y Combinator, what Exponential Impact is at its core is a 14-week accelerator where we take companies at the seed level. You can consider that companies that have not made money or are in the process of developing a product or are about to go to market and begin selling their product. So small business folks here, if you guys have a big idea, it might be a good fit. But what the Tech Accelerator focuses on is new and emerging technologies, largely software, or innovative uses for that technology. One of the people that just graduated from this year's cohort is actually right out the doors and to the left. His name is Lawrence Wagner with Spark Mindset. I don't see him in here, otherwise I'd point him out. But he was in the second cohort. He just graduated. He's in the process of raising his funds to go to market. So if you guys are here and interested and want to learn more about what it's like to be a company in that accelerator, go talk to Lawrence and ask him about it. But it's a really innovative program. It's attracted companies from all across the world. We've had companies from Saudi Arabia, Colombia. It's been an amazing program, and all of it's about economic development and increasing the number of companies here. Because in the first year, 3 of the 4 companies in that cohort moved here, and this year I believe it's almost all of them. I think all 7. I don't want to speak out of tongue just in case, but I think all 7 companies decided to stay here at the end of the day. So just in 2 years, 11 new companies, 30 new jobs in the city, all high income, high possibility for growth. And it's been an amazing program to have here, and we've gotten to work with a lot of teams, like Spark Mindset. We actually have, we're partnering with them on some of these camps and some of these initiatives. So, yeah.
What's the name again?
Spark Mindset.
Thank you, Forrest. So we've talked quite a bit about efforts that we've been involved with, past and present. As we start to take a look at what's ahead, Gretchen, could you talk to us a little bit about Pikes Peak Community College's focus as far as future efforts in education, training, and certification?
Thanks, Vinnie. I think the future is the most exciting part, right? We've done a lot of exciting things, and I think we always look forward to what's the next thing we can do, how we can work together, where we can progress this. Our big vision at Pikes Peak Community College is to have cybersecurity spread across all disciplines, right? We tend to stovepipe it in computer science or IT or in networking. And I think one of the big initiatives we have is to get it into paralegal, the medical, the vet techs, the automotive, the HVAC, all our CTE disciplines, to see if we can't make that more robust. A lot of our folks on faculty at PPCC have taken their own initiatives to incorporate some of this in there. But we'd like to use some of the standards and kind of innovation of this collaboration to bring that into the classroom more directly. We do an intro course for students coming into PPCC. We are piloting a cyber unit in that so that we can expose it to them from the minute they start to come to our campus as to what that is and where their value is. I think the big, hairy, audacious thing is to make Colorado Springs the center of the universe as far as cybersecurity. I think that's one of those big, hairy, audacious things. But I do think if we can be the center of what's going on in Colorado, and I think we've taken huge steps towards that already, as well as getting recognition at the national level but by the National Initiative of Cybersecurity Education. They come to us when they have study groups and they're working on things, and they reach down to Colorado. Also, the Department of Homeland Defense reaches down and asks about how things are working here and what happens. So integrating ourselves both into that regional, state, and national level decision-making process on how to do what Rick said, get rid of the cybersecurity threat permanently, I think is something that we all are very excited about and contribute to in all different ways. And we'd like to have you guys join that because, as Ekta said earlier, you guys there's the first BBB to offer a cyber badge in the country. It's amazing, and it's getting noticed. So, be a part of that excitement in whatever way fits your business, and come talk to one of us, see what we can do. There's got to be lots of new innovative ways we can work together that we haven't thought of yet.
Thanks, Gretchen. I have one final question for the board, or for the panel, excuse me, and then I'd like to open it up to any questions that you might have. My final question is for you, Rick. So within the National Cybersecurity Center, and I apologize, I'll take a moment to set this up. So the National Cybersecurity Center's building is owned by UCCS. There's a north wing to that building, which is currently in plans for development for future cybersecurity programming for UCCS. Rick, could you tell us a little bit about what that currently looks like?
So the genesis of that House bill that I told you about a few moments ago, HB 1453, which established the National Cybersecurity Center and directed UCCS to form partnership with it, that came about as a result of former Governor Hickenlooper had visited Israel and was very impressed with what they were doing in cybersecurity over there. And he came back and he called down to UCCS and said, can we do something similar? And so when the governor calls the chancellor and asks, can we do something similar, what do you think the answer is? Of course we can. And so, and we have a very robust program. In fact, we are the only university in the nation that has a Bachelor of Innovation degree. And it was created at our university, and it has a cybersecurity degree built into it. And the BI is cross-disciplinary, and it involves students not just in technical, but also other skills, because the number one leading skills that businesses are looking for in their employees is, one, ability to articulate, two, the ability to problem solve. And the BI does that for everybody. So we're not graduating business students who don't have any technical understanding, and we're not graduating technical students who can't relate to their colleagues or their bosses. So we have a very robust program. Governor Hickenlooper came down, met with the chancellor, and we showed them this building we have on North Nevada Avenue, which has enough space in there. Well, they used to fabricate military satellites in the 1980s and early 90s, and that required about 4 football fields worth of space. And we looked at that, and the governor said, this is fantastic. I want to build my national cybersecurity here. And he said, how much is it going to take? And he was told, sir, $21 million. He said, you got 7. See what you can do with that. Now, $7 million just doesn't go as far as $7 million used to, because for $7 million on this huge facility, we got a brand new roof and we got new HVAC, okay? Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, but nothing else. It's a big, empty space. So when the NCC was founded, and until we started getting money through this latest legislation, they were pretty much hard up and hurting for themselves. We were able to lease them a space in that building, but they had to go out and build their own. And now we're working together to continue building out that facility and make it a multi-use community facility for cybersecurity. And right now, the south annex to the cybersecurity facility at 3650 North Nevada Avenue is home to NCC and Exponential Impact, and we are partnering with them actively at the university to work on, to seek new opportunities, to work with businesses, and to develop new solutions. At the same time, we're now trying to get an economic development agency grant for $5.2 million to start completing the interior on both, primarily on the north side, but also with some construction on the south side. We've been working on this opportunity from UCCS together with the NCC since at least April of this year. Right now, it's looking very good that we are going to get this money. If we do get this money and start construction, it looks like we could start occupying spaces that include offices, labs, and classrooms that can be scheduled for different events, for different purposes. We could see our first ones in August of 21 is what we're looking at. So a lot of new stuff, and that's just the beginning. We still got several football fields worth of empty space out there. So if any of you have a rich uncle with $17 million doing nothing, give me a call, okay? So thank you.
Thanks, Rick. So at this time, I'd like to open it up to any questions. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Joe Alvarez. I'm a SecureSet pupil. Thank you all for being here this morning. It's very important. There's a lot of incredible work evidently being done by you and your community to address employment, giving this environment a great power of competition. But perception is reality. And there's a perception, there's an uproar, if you will, that a lot of job postings for cybersecurity professionals are unrealistic. They're asking for a master's degree, 10 years of experience, 5+ certifications, and a top secret clearance for an entry-level role. If we're looking for purple unicorns, we're never going to fill these roles, and we have all this talent that can't fill these roles, and I'm wondering what are we doing in this community to address that? Thank you.
Do you guys mind if I take this one? This is my baby. Thank you, Joe. I feel the exact same way you did. So what I did is I went and through Pikes Community College, we did a study using the workforce data of job postings from 2017 to 2018, and we mapped all 3,427 jobs to exactly that chart. So I made all these really pretty pictures about how this is so unreasonable. And it doesn't make sense when 80% of the jobs posted require a TSS-CI clearance in place. Even if you do Vinnie's math with so many leaving each month, it would take us 10 years to fill those jobs. Then you looked at the CISSP, and it says entry. So in the one job description, it would have entry level, it would have CISSP, and it would have 6 years experience. And we're like, wait a minute. And so what we did is we built that chart, we did that study, and we've actually briefed it to any company that would listen to us. We go in with our little report and say, here, turn on this a bit. We took the names away to protect the guilty, but look, are you in here somewhere? You know, and we've had that discussion. DHS, Noel Kyle, went out and did a study on the National Initiative Cybersecurity Education Framework. And they have job roles in there, right? And they have KSAs, and they have it all charted out. And so she went one layer further and said, here are the types of words we need to see in entry level. Here are the types of words we need to see in mid-level. Here's the types of words we need to see in upper level. And so we then provided that to those companies to say, you may want to use this when you're building your job descriptions. And so between 2017 and 2017 there was not one intern or apprentice job out there. There was only 17 entry-level, specifically stated entry-level jobs in the market. In 2018, there was 17 intern-labeled jobs with intern-labeled terminology. And there was also entry-level jobs that didn't have CISSP in it. So I think the word's getting out bit by bit. And if you want my report to shove down anybody's throat, you're welcome to have it. But it's one of those things where, and I've given it to folks in Louisville and different places where they see the same thing, but they don't know how to have that communication. We've gone to the Human Resources Management Board and conferences and briefed it and just said, hey, here's what we're seeing. Our students don't know what they can apply for, because when you talk to a hiring manager, they say, oh yeah, they don't need all that stuff. I'm like, well, then why does it say required? Because then our students aren't even going to apply for this stuff. So I think it's an education process of getting them to understand if they do want to get access to and help us make those purple unicorns, they're not even going to get kids through the system and students through the system unless they actually show that they want to open their minds to that. And that's where I think a lot of that engagement that Abe and Rick are doing with industry are helping to educate them. They're coming in and talking to the students and then building the job posting to say, well, I want 3 of these guys, so how do I get 3 of these guys? What do I do? So I think we're changing the approach to that, and it may not be speedy, but I do think it's effective, and I think we're making some progress. Does that answer your question?
I'm gonna tag on to that. I keep getting nods from my fellow panel members here because in addition to volunteering as president for ISSA, I'm also in industry. I manage the cybersecurity programs for L3 Harris, and we are part of the problem. We have jobs to support DoD and federal, and we put out these recs with all of this terminology that it does exactly what Gretchen was saying. Entry level, but with senior level qualifications required. And we've had to learn how to tailor our requirements. And a lot of times what we publish is what gets flowed down to us from government. So they set the expectations, we just republish it and try to find people who will fit those expectations. And we have to stop the train. We need to readjust it, we need to rewrite it, we need to interpret what the government wants into what industry can provide, and then that's what we need to publish. We and other companies are doing better at that. It's going to take a long time to fix the source of the problem, let alone the path that the problem follows. So what I always tell individuals out in the community, don't let the way a job rec is written, don't disqualify yourself. If you feel like you know what the job requires, even though you don't have all the requirements, submit your interest anyway. The hiring companies may have the opportunity to waive or assist in helping you get what you need. But if you disqualify yourself, you'll never have the opportunity to be considered.
Thank you.
And the opportunity to kind of sometimes take it out of the hands of HR algorithms, no disparagement toward the HR system, but to allow them to meet you and to get to know you and make that relationship, that leads to some pretty neat things. I have, in fact, had the experience of an individual student of ours, no longer had a clearance, wanted to get into a big defense contractor. We saw her engage with the right people, the program managers, not the HR office, develop a relationship. The program manager then turned around, took the job description, and this is fact, rewrote it and said, must be a SecureSet graduate, because he wanted this individual. And so if we engage the right people in the right places and encourage them to think outside the box and think outside the algorithm, we can see these things happen. And so, that's our plea to those of you in your organizations and those that you interface with to think outside that box. And we can, since when did the great Continental Army, the rebels that built this nation, since when did we kind of rely on convention? Since when did we, as entrepreneurs, rely on the government to solve our problems, when we can actually influence the government positively, not by reducing the clearance standards and these types of things, but by finding solutions to get us there? No feelings about it, though.
Thanks, Abe. Joe, I think you struck a nerve there, maybe just a little bit. Sir, you have a question.
Actually, I just want to reinforce what everybody's saying. I'm telling you, coming from a DoD hiring team in cybersecurity, those recs are written by HR departments, and they don't know anything about cybersecurity. So don't let those recs scare you away. And what you're going to interview with is the cybersecurity person. Okay? He's going to look at a myriad of things, and if he wants you, he's going to convince the HR department that you're going to be hired. Okay? Even from a clearance standpoint, I've seen situations where they say, you know what, we will get this person on an interim, and we will hire them, and then we will process the clearance while they're on the job.
Thanks. Other questions? Okay, well, it looks like we're going to wrap up a bit early. We had left about 30 minutes for questions, but if that's all the questions that you have, then I will just let you know that the next session is scheduled to begin at 10:50, and in this room will be Cybersecurity Simplified with Rodney Gillette. And if you don't know Rodney, you will certainly be entertained as well as informed in that session. And if you would, please join me in thanking our panel members for the information that they shared and the time they provided this morning.